I'm calling this. Well, thank you. I am now calling this Personnel Committee meeting to order. I see Commissioner Bullock. I don't see Mayor Pro Tem on my site. Does anybody else see him?
No, ma'am,
Okay, have you heard from him, Cindy?
I have not.
Okay, we'll go forward. We have Commissioner Bullock, Commissioner Kern, our city clerk, our finance director, Mr. Alan Thornton, our city manager, Commissioner Gilreath, Melissa, our HR director, Labar, Mary Yunt, Chief Cottrell, Stephen Blasco, Amy Ratliff, Tina Chief, John Tovey, and our city symbol. Purpose of the meeting today is to see if we can come up with a package for our employees for the upcoming budget year. I'm not going to deliberate. This meeting is strictly for our package, and I'm going to turn it over to whichever one wants to take the lead. That would be our city manager or our HR director.
Well, I guess that's me. So I'll attempt to carry forward here. I guess from this point in this time, the current budget as it exists, like we discussed a couple of weeks ago, whenever we had our last budget and finance committee meeting, I believe, as it is currently constructed, can pretty well accommodate whatever the recommendation that would come forth from this personnel committee regarding staff compensation into fiscal year 21-22 without a lot of deconstruction and reconstruction. We had talked about the implementation of merit pay. Of course, that's subject to board approval. And that's really the reason why it was sort of deferred to a personnel committee meeting to have that conversation about which way that the board would like to see this go. I think we've had, a number of conversations about staffing issues, staffing concerns, compensation. None of that has changed. As a matter of fact, as far as staffing and the ability to not simply retain people, but attract people has never been more difficult than it is currently in this existing market. We're not the only ones. We're really not. I don't know if we want to get into having that conversation, but I keep up pretty well with the news and news articles and things that are going on in other jurisdictions, especially during this time of year when there is a lot of reporting on budgets and what is contained within budgets in both municipalities and counties. And nearly every one of those that I am reading, there is an expressed concern by the budget officer or manager who is constructing that budget of staffing and the ability to attract staff. And a lot of places are doing different things. So, it's not just an issue within the police department. We have several vacancies at Public Works. Quite honestly, we are not going to be able at this time to operate the pool on a full schedule like we would like to, simply because we can't attract lifeguards. And we're not the only ones. I saw an article, I believe last week in Raleigh, where they were 75 lifeguards short manning their facility. So it's across the board currently. It's making it more difficult than it had been before to attract these folks. And of course, what that means is, as an end result, is that competition for the pool of potential employees that is out there becomes greater. And that's just the fact of life currently. So I'll kind of leave it at that and encourage our committee and the board members that are here today to have a good open conversation. And I am hopeful that by the end of this conversation that we have a recommendation going forth to the Board of Commissioners that will provide me with some direction on staff compensation moving into fiscal year 21-22. So, we can have as wide a ranging conversation as we wish to have today, or it'd be very targeted. So, Madam Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. I would like to add that we've also been joined by our mayor. I'm going to go now to Melissa and our HR director and see what has been formulating in her mind, the ideas or suggestions or what she's come up with. Melissa?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We've been working on the merit, and I think it's a good implementation to maintain employees and move them up the scales versus just getting a COLA. I've done some research, and municipalities that do offer merit do both merit and COLA.
Mr. Director, is that something our budget could allot for?
I believe so. We would have to, narrow our focus on merit if what we choose to do becomes basically providing a cost of living to all employees, and then the potential for merit. And I think that's really what we need to focus on if that is where we are going. I'm not set either way. I think it would be beneficial to implement merit pay if it is done correctly, and that is the challenge and will always remain the challenge, is that merit pay to a certain extent becomes subjective based upon how it's implemented throughout each department within your organization. It can cause issues, it can cause problems if it's not done
Correct.
equitably and fairly, and basically by using the same measures across each department. We've had these conversations before about merit. I've seen merit implemented. I've seen merit taken away. I've seen merit all over the board. And it is not the easiest thing, to administer. It's just not. And I'll leave it at that. But I think we have enough flexibility within the budget financially to accommodate just about wherever this board chooses to go in regards to employee compensation.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Toby.
Would the merit pay, obviously we need the COLA to keep the COLA, would the merit pay be based on extra training or extra qualifications that the member of staff would be willing to take on? So that would be they would be better at their job, better equipped at their job. So would it be based on the extra training that they would be willing to take?
Well, that would be certainly a contributory factor in the consideration of potential merit pay and what to potentially award to that employee. Not exclusively, no. Merit pay is based upon many factors that are evaluated during the course of that time period. Initiative in gaining additional education or certifications, especially if it is the individual taking the initiative to do that and to make those improvements, and then actually exhibit the fact that whatever course that they took is actually benefiting not only themselves, but the organization, would be a part of any, evaluation for potential merit pay, but not exclusively, no. And that's another conversation that, we were having and potentially looking at is re-implementing the employee development, professional development aspect that was once here at the city of Oxford, and utilizing that as another way to attract and retain employees as well.
Pat, I'd like to make a statement.
Yes, Ms. Kern.
I'm not in favor of a merit raise this year. If that's something the board would want to take up for the 22-23 budget, it would give us a year to work on it, establish the program that we would go by. But as I said last meeting, I think our employees deserve a raise as of July 1. I'm in favor of 4% raise. I don't like the merit system at all to begin with, but if the city wanted to work on it for the next year, have it prepared, that would be fine. But I'm not in favor of it. At this point in time, I would like to just have a cost of living raise for the employees in this coming budget. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah. I hear the comment as far as merit pay, but there's so many ways that could be implemented. I haven't heard any ideas as to how we would implement it. In other words, who's going to make the recommendation that someone deserves merit pay, and who's going to be the approval authority?
Melissa, my next question to you would be, have you got any ideas or examples of the type of merit pays that other municipalities our sizes that they're using? The type that the city of Oxford once used, a beginning step to the merit, this type of system.
Yes, and we've based our evaluation off of similar municipalities. And as far as the merit amount, Alan and I will get together and decide on the scale of how it would work. But yes, I have been researching with other municipalities.
Can I make a
I
comment?
can give you, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Okay, so hearing all the comments, and I think Danny makes a point about that we haven't had a lot of discussion with respect to the specific personnel discussion of what the tool would look like, how Alan would implement training of the managers and so on. And I'm going to take my video off in case I'm breaking up, because on my end, it looks like I'm freezing. I was originally wondering about the possibility of saying 2% COLA increase and reserve the remaining 2% to use towards merit, because my understanding is that when you develop a merit system, you can do it however you want, meaning that a supervisor can write an evaluation and think an employee deserves merit, but maybe only 1%. And another employee who knocks the socks off might deserve all the way up to 4%, so that there's some flexibility in how you apply merit. And so I do wonder if you look at what Danny is saying, or Commissioner Kern is saying with respect to giving us time to figure out the details of how it would be implemented a little more, we could wait an entire year, or could we implement 3% COLA and take that remaining 1%, but apply it in 6 months, so that you actually have a 6-month lead-in period for supervisors and Alan and Melissa to be working on it. And that 1% over 6 months is actually the same as taking 2% and applying it. And again, because merit pay does not go to all employees, you usually have the capacity to give a wider range, anywhere between 1% and 4% among the employees that would be getting it. But starting in January rather than.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I was of the thought that we would not be able to set a merit system up today. We would be deciding whether or not we were going to the full board with the recommendation of a merit system being implemented in the future. Because I don't think we could stay here until 8 o'clock tonight and we couldn't come up with a formula to establish a merit system for this year. But my personal opinion is a merit system is an incentive to an employee to strive to go above and beyond. That was what I was thinking today. Two things we were gonna do would be to come up with how we were gonna compensate our employees this year, this fiscal year coming, and come up with whether or not we wanted to, down the road, implement the merit system.
Well, I thought Alan's original proposal was to start merit in July. So that's the only reason.
I may have been wrong.
My proposal originally was to begin merit pay in fiscal year 21-22, and you can look at that any way you want to as far as when it's actually going to begin, because it will be a challenge, however you look at it, however you choose to implement it, and however you choose to administer it. It does run the gamut all over the board. Melissa and I had done a little survey recently of some of the other cities and how they implement merit, if they have merit, and what they're doing, and it's all over the place. So, it is something that I think we do need to have more conversation about, so that this board does feel comfortable with what we may potentially be doing. I will also say this, I appreciate Commissioner Curran and what he is recommending, I guess is the better term there. Some of I'll just be honest with you, a number of the exit interviews that we have seen and other things talk about, not receiving a substantial raise and that kind of thing. We've given raises here every year during my 4-year period of time, and have done a salary study dating back to, I think it began in 17, 18, that type of time frame. I know there's been a lot of conversation, especially from some of our members who are not with us here this afternoon at this committee meeting, in regards to their concerns of the police department, and the reason that employees there may be leaving, and our ability to compete for law enforcement officers in the current environment. And like I stated earlier, that's not getting any better. That's not changing. I don't know that it wouldn't be a bad idea, to be honest with you, for us to potentially consider if where we're going is a cost of living adjustment beginning July the 1st. If it's in the range that we're considering as far as Commissioner Curran's recommendation, I think our employees would be very grateful for that. And if you really want to get into answering a lot of questions coming from the police department in regards to their pay and how they feel in regards to their competition and where we're losing officers to, and their rate of pay and all those types of things. And this just hit me this morning because Melissa had presented me with some information, and there was a note on there where Reidsville is doing this currently. They're engaged in doing a study, a salary study just for their police department to see where their police department stands in terms of salary competitiveness within the market that they are in. I mean, it's a difficult thing that is going on right now. And if you can indulge me for a moment, this is today's Durham Herald. And the article contains the statement that the Durham Police Department struggling with recruitment. Let's see. Durham has a real struggle with recruiting right now. Staffing is way down. We've talked to officers who have left the Durham Police Department. It's about pay and support, and they are, let's see, 71 vacancies among its 550 sworn positions as of April. So it's kind of wide across the country, especially in our neck of the woods, to try to recruit these officers and get them here. And anything that we could do, in my opinion, to basically not only show that we are competitive in what we pay, and the information that Melissa and I have provided to you, shows that back at the time that the salary study was done in 2017, 2018, that kind of time frame, we were relatively competitive. I mean, it was kind of right there in the middle with municipalities that were surveyed that were our size. So there were, of course, some above us and some below us. And it's gotten more competitive since then. I think the latest BLET class up at the community college right now, they've got 7 people in it. And typically, they have 12 to 20, that type of thing. And that's going on all over the place. So it's not getting any better. And if we truly want to take a look objectively within the police department, I think that might be a way of taking a picture of it as it exists currently today within the market in which we compete. There's an ample supply of funding in the salary line item within the police department for lapsed salaries to do that and to engage in that. It's not going to be the full-blown citywide study that we did prior to this date 3-4 years ago. In my opinion, it would be something to consider doing, and that way we again have a better idea where we are.
I got to agree with that. I think our police department, every police department in the country at this particular time, are having a real hard time with everything that has been going on. So I think a really reasonable pay raise shows our support of the police department, which we need to do. Also, there's the question of the take-home car policy. Could that be altered? That's an additional incentive for them. But I would support a substantial rise for the police department. Not to say that the other departments are not doing an excellent job, which they are. I've always been proud of our workers in Oxford, but the police department are having a particularly hard time with recruitment, retainment, and the things that are going on in the country. They're being used and abused, so to speak, not necessarily by us, but I just want to support them.
Pat,
Yes.
I would support taking time to look at this very closely. We got really 2 issues. One, do we want merit pay? And in general, I think I'm in favor of it. But the second part again goes to how's it going to be implemented? across the board? Who's the approval authority? What's the recommendation procedure? Does this year's merit performance equate to normal performance next year? There are a lot of issues as to how it would be handled that we need to take a good look at.
Yes,
I agree with what Ron is saying. We've just come out of a pandemic, and probably a lot of the responsibilities and workload has changed just a little bit as a result of it. We probably had a big change in how things were done. And so even if we implemented a merit pay at this point, what are we really evaluating? What we did during COVID or what they did 3 years ago? I mean, many of these employees, you may be looking back to see what they've done way back when. I mean, so to make everything fair and put everything on a fair playing field, we need to have the plan, and everybody needs to know what the rules are, and then implement the merit based upon from this day forward, or whatever the implementation date is forward. Because otherwise, you know, the police, this merit thing probably won't solve an issue with the police department. All it takes is for them not to like their schedule or something. And then they get to move because there's so many vacancies someplace else. They have, just like nurses had this same ability to move about for any reason because they were in such high demand.
yeah.
Merit and pay probably won't solve this issue. Actually, you know, Oxford should be attractive. We have low crime, we have less issues, we are very safe environment. I mean, so that's an incentive there. I'm not suggesting that should be. I'm just tooting Oxford's horn.
Yes, I don't blame you.
Any other thoughts or ideas from any of our department heads? I see we've been joined by Chief Coley. Any, because he just got.
Yes, ma'am. If I can interject a second in response to Ms. Gilreath, I agree. There's a vast amount of reasons why people stay and why people leave. However, during the exit interviews and with my conversation with several members here and members that have left, pay is a concern. And it's a concern as far as whenever you're looking to your counterparts, when you're looking at your neighbors and neighboring cities, even with inside the county itself. The job description, as I stated before, it changes. If you're a police officer, if you're a deputy, if you're a state trooper or working for SBI, all those job descriptions change. But whenever we compare apples to apples, and like recently in Henderson, the things that they had to do to up the ante, so to speak, so that they could become competitive. And whenever they move their benefits and they move their package up, there again, it equates to ours. And people look, and I had a young man that came in from Durham. I believe he lived on Rectory Street now. And he was coming, he works for Durham. He came and spoke with us. And one of the questions he asked myself and Lieutenant Stockwell was, how long does it take to reach top pay? And I couldn't give him a definitive answer because we don't have a plan. We don't have a mechanism in place to reach top pay. So he asked some other questions, and all of them were related around pay. And this guy had a 4-year degree. He has 2 children living inside of the city of Oxford, but he haven't returned the application back to us. That was one meeting. I've had another officer to come in recently, and his father was retired Durham officer. And there again, when he started asking about our benefits package, where we start, his progression through the ranks, we did explain that we had a tuition reimbursement, and we highlight the things that we have here. And there again, we can talk about crime. What's competitive? When you look at Durham crime rate, when you look at ours as far as calls of service, some agencies you go to, you can't catch your breath just running from one call to another. Other agencies, you get a slower pace where you can't absorb and think. And sort of like give the boutique service. I mean, a lot of agencies can't check when someone leaves. We're able to check on someone's home if they leave and go on vacation. We're able to do welfare checks quite often. We're able to implement and say, hey, we do have the ability to go work a particular intersection or something like that. All of those attribute to an officer's daily activity, but whenever they join in, they're looking at basically the same thing, pay and benefits. And if they're saying, hey, I have a take-home car, I can drive, I have tuition reimbursement. If like in Youngsville, I believe if they get 6 different courses, a radar certification, if they get intoxilizer certifications, they get $1,000 for each certification. And those are the type of things that we're competing against. Some things we know we can do, or there's an opportunity. Some things we know we can't. I mean, for me to sit here and say that we probably could compete against someone at like Cary or those type of communities with exorbitant budgets, no. But the biggest challenge is the neighboring departments that are nearby. And we're just trying to be successful in competing against them. And in law enforcement, just like Ms. Gilbert stated, it's like nursing right now. And I think that all my counterparts, everybody in the city does a good job. They work hard and they're deserving. But right now in the marketplace, what's on demand and how to retain and even recruit. I've had 4 people to come in and apply for jobs with us that we denied because we are still trying to keep our standards up. We're not accepting anybody, but at the same time, we do have to hire somebody. And in order to get those good somebodies, we just want to assess and look at what we're offering in relation to other departments to get them on board and to get them here and not use us. Because I've been saying since 2015, I saw the pattern coming in which smaller agencies, not just Oxford, but smaller agencies will be looked upon as a training ground for larger agencies. And that has come into fruition now because we see the demand with law enforcement. Mr. Thornton was exactly right. Community colleges are not processing as many applicants through in years past. There's been close to a 60% drop in some cases. And here recently, I think they started with about 9. We have 1 officer in there that graduated. However, we have no one in the pipeline going to the August school. So if you have no one going to the August school, if we get someone to go to the January school, it will be a whole year before we're able to put somebody boots on the ground, starting from this day till when we can have them operational. That's a gap that we're going to suffer from. And hopefully we can get somebody that's certified, a certified officer to come in. But when you're looking at certified officers that have experience that's coming on board, and we have gained a few, we've gained a couple, still, that's challenging because just as soon as you gain them, they know that they're certified and they can go somewhere else. And I have one right now that's interested in the highway patrol. Highway patrol recruited him, but the highway patrol has been running short for the last 15 years or so. Right now, I think they have more than over 100. They used to run close to 200 positions vacant. And I think now it's about 160 or so like that. They even shortened their school. They had a long school in which everybody went to. Now they have a 9-week school. The 9-week school is for certified officers so that they can transfer over to Highway Patrol that much easier. So everybody's using different strategies to recruit from a small pool. And the only way we're going to be able to continue to be competitive, we're going to have to reassess and step our packages up. And looking at recently, you know, not just I think the city as a whole, definitely, but in particular the police, because that's just the nature of the beast in which we're dealing with right now. Low interest in law enforcement with all the media demands and sensations. And now with the police reform, and you're looking at the challenges to qualified immunity and those different issues. Some of them are welcome, some of them are challenging because you're going to see more officer exit. I've had 2 officers to leave recently that got out of law enforcement altogether. And they said to me, And each time I have an exit interview, I do have another person from the command staff with me for verification. And they told me personally that they didn't like the way law enforcement was headed. The officers are liable for everything, whether they're doing within their job description or outside. And one of them went to selling water, the other one went to becoming an exterminator. And those are two good officers that we don't have. And I think other agencies are seeing the same thing. They're seeing the challenges of just trying to retain and hold on to the officers that you have. But officers also realize that the least thing that they can complain about, or if they get upset about, one of my counterparts in Henderson, Marcus Barrow, Chief Barrow, and I were speaking, and we were talking about the disciplinary action. It's been cases where if you take a disciplinary action against an officer, well, they'll depart. Even though they know they may have been wrong. You're holding them to a standard in which I believe is protective of the city and protective of the officer themselves, and protective of the community. However, if they still feel that, hey, well, I got written up for this, so I've got a disciplinary action for that, I leave. And he is facing the same challenges that we're facing. And it's not just long and I don't mean to be long-winded, but I also don't want to be short about it, because I need for y'all to understand the urgency that we're facing. This isn't something that is going to be forecast down the road and that we can keep pushing the ball or kicking the can down the road further. This is something we need to address now. So that's my spiel. Anybody have any questions for me, or if you'd like to stop by my office and sit down and chat with me, I'm open to it. If you'd like to come along and hop in a car with one of the officers, do a ride along. So just to get a feel from them. But the landscape of law enforcement in this nation has changed. It has changed dramatically. And after doing this for 34 years, I know what I'm talking about. And it's not getting better, and it's not going to get better, but we got to put our heads together and come up with something so that we can be competitive.
Thank you, Chief. Mayor, I
Well
saw your
said.
hand next. Mayor,
Thank you, Commissioner. Earlier, Alan mentioned the possibility of doing a PD-specific salary study. Alan, do you have any idea how long it would take to accomplish something like that? It looks like he's looking in his drawer.
I do not. I don't think that it would take Susan that long to accomplish that. We would just have to get in touch with her and see what her current workload is. She's always been very responsive. And again, you know, we're not looking at something where she's attempting to survey 50 positions or more. I would just have to get in touch with her and find out. I can do that as soon as this afternoon. But I do think that that may be a very good idea, just to exhibit, you know, to our officers and to our police staff that, you know, it is in our consciousness and we are doing everything that we can do to be fair and to be competitive within the market that we are in. And, you know, Chief brought the point up that we're never going to compete with Holly Springs. We're not going to compete with Wake Forest. We're not going to compete with Raleigh and Cary and those. But we do need to be competitive within the market that we are in. And I think it would show good faith if we did that to our officers, who would see that, you know, the board is certainly conscious of the fact that we may or we may not, and we want to be assured.
I think that there is a lot of merit in that, because again, and certainly the chief's comments are important. And I'm glad that we heard them, but at the same time, we are looking at the city as a whole. And when we're discussing the personnel policy and the wages and all of the different things that are on the table, we're thinking citywide. And I would imagine that if I were in a different department, that I might be thinking, well, all my manager needs to do is go lobby about why my department needs a specific bump. And I certainly understand what the chief is saying, but I think if we do a salary study, then what we have is objective information that is specific to the comments that the chief is making. And so if there is a decision to make a different type of pay adjustment for the police department, it is clear to everyone else, given that we just did a salary study recently for the citywide, why that is happening. And I think that your mention, Alan, of fairness, we need to be fair and appropriate for our police department, and we need to be fair to the rest of our employees in all of the other departments. And I think having that additional study would be a way of getting to that. I had two other questions related. One of them is, if we proceed as Commissioner Curran suggested, and I think Commissioner Bullock stated that the delay on merit while we study it and develop the plan and work that out so that everybody feels good with how we might introduce that, I would like to propose that we also have a discussion in the next 6-12 months, however long the board sets, to look at career development, that we don't just put that off while we're discussing merit, but that we look at what do we want to do with career development for all of our departments, and what do we want to do with merit so that we can use the two of those together. And lastly, I just have a question because Commissioner Tovey brought it up and the chief brought it up about take-home cars. Now, I know that many, many years ago when Randy Heeman was the manager or city manager, we adopted a take-home car policy that our officers who live within 20 miles get a take-home car. And I'm hearing as though we do not offer this as a benefit. So what I would like to know from the chief is how many of our officers, what percent do not qualify for our take-home car policy as it is, meaning they live further away than 20 miles.
I have to pull that up, Mayor, as far as I can't give you a definitive answer on that currently. I can pull it up and give it to you in a matter of an hour or so. I just don't have that as far as Lieutenant Stockwell. He has that since he's over patrol. But given a good guesstimate, we are using our take-home policy within 20 miles, but most of our officers do not live inside of Oxford. We only have maybe 2 or 3 at the most that lives inside of Oxford. And the other ones are living.
But we don't restrict it to living within Oxford. We restrict it to a 20-mile radius.
Correct. I'm just saying, I'm giving a little background. There's 3 that live inside of Oxford, but we have been recruiting officers as far as from Wilson. I got officers that live in Clayton. I got officers that live in Morrisville. I have officers that live further out in Vance County, all of those. And we have a limited number of patrol cars. All the cars that we can utilize currently, we are utilizing as far as within the 20-mile radius. So we're maximizing what we have available. However, whenever you're competing against another agency, they say regardless of where you live, I had an officer that left and went to Morrisville and has a take-home car to drive to Morrisville every day and back. I have officers who leave and go to a county, and they're taking their county cars now wherever they go and back. And it's not a restriction of 20 miles. The guys now, they're driving at 20 miles, dropping it off at a fire department or some other safe place and driving their personal vehicles. However, whenever you start looking at it as far as saying, hey, can I compete with this? And they saying someone down the road has just recruited me and told me that I can live where I'm living now and continue to drive my car all the way. And when they're looking at gas prices, and just like
Exactly.
recently with the
Well,
gas
but-
issue that we had,
Chief, I would, just for the record, and I hear what you're saying, but for the record of those who were not in the discussion when we had it 8-ish years ago, because some of those jurisdictions are much larger. Everybody in the room needs to know that when an officer is in a take-home car, they are considered to still be on work time. So if they are not paying attention or they are tired and they get in an accident, not only have they destroyed city property, but they are also on city's workers' comp. And for a smaller jurisdiction like ours, that can be a big hit. That doesn't mean that I'm automatically against it. But when you have an officer who's going to be driving all the way across Raleigh to Morrisville, the likelihood of accidents and so on, and our workers' comp program isn't as broad. So everybody needs to understand that when they are in city property, even though they are off the clock, they are still considered to be working. And anything that happens to them is then the city's financial responsibility, not theirs. And so I just want to put that out there, that it's not just as simple as we're not being fair, we're not trying to treat our folks right. It is a huge responsibility the further you allow people to drive away from our area.
and that's true, and that's something that needs to be considered. However, you have to consider that in the overall context of if that's a recruitment tool, and if that's something that's going to make someone decide to work for Oxford or not work for Oxford, is something that we need to talk about and something we need to consider, because there again, we're just trying to make it competitive with the agencies around us.
Thank you.
Pat, may I ask a question? And I know a lot of this, we're talking about police salaries and take-home calls, but we're here to establish a pay raise for the coming year for the city of Oxford employees. Isn't that the reason for the meeting today? I don't hear an answer.
She's on mute.
Madam Chair, you're muted.
I'm sorry. You're correct, Commissioner Kern. I was gonna say we were getting a little off topic
We're
today
way off
for
topic.
the purpose of this
I
meeting.
mentioned the 4% COLA. If I'm not on the committee, but that's what I would like, I'd be in favor of.
Mr. Bullock as a member of the committee, and again, I'm gonna ask, has anyone seen Mayor Pro Tem, who is the other member of this committee, on today?
No, ma'am, he's still not on.
Thank you.
I agree with Commissioner Curran.
Well, I agree with Commissioner Curran.
Your standards 4% COLA, and what about the merit, Commissioner Bullock?
Start looking at it. Not let it disappear, but I haven't heard enough to say I'd vote for merit pay right now, because I want to know how it's going to be done, how it's going to be administered across the board, what's the criteria involved. If you aren't careful, merit pay can also be a hindrance and cause a lot of decisions. So I'm saying if we're going to do it, let's do it right, but let's be careful in planning for it.
So am I hearing that, and coming from you as a member of the committee, as a recommendation that we present to the board of 4% COLA for all of our employees, and to study the feasibility of implementing a merit in the near foreseeable future? Is that what I'm hearing? Then I'll get to you, Commissioner Gilreath. Is that what I'm hearing, Commissioner Bullock?
Well, yes, I'm not saying a time limit. I just said,
No.
don't let it sit idle. We need to start working on it, but
Yeah, what I would propose to do is get you that information back as quickly as I can get it from our consultant in regards to the study for the police department. I'll get you that information just as quickly as I can get it from Susan McDonald.
But we're
Okay.
looking at some things that if even with a steady progress, is gonna take months to look at and decide upon.
Commissioner Gilreath,
Well, I'm hearing us pick a number, 4%. How do we arrive at that number? And if we are gonna vote on 4%, and we say yes, that's a burden for the liability for the city, for all of those employees that are part of this retirement system that we're gonna be obligating ourselves for forever. Now, it just doesn't stop this budget year. I mean, so that's one part of it. The other part of it, at 4%, is there enough money left to do anything with the merit? I mean, could we, could we financially handle all of that?
We weren't gonna do the merit this year.
That's my question. What are we really doing, and how do we come about that 4%?
I went by what Alan gave us when I asked what would be the cost of 1%. He gave us the price of 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Exactly,
So that's where I came up with the 4%.
exactly.
That would be a cost to the city of $212,000.
Per year.
I didn't think. Well, I may be wrong, but I thought the merit would be at the earliest in the 2022-23 budget year, not in this year's budget.
any other comments? I know we heard a lot from the chief of police, and I thank him, but I would like to say to all the other department heads that this is not a police cost of living increase or police raise. This is a total, all city employees salary adjustment, however it goes. And I think the mayor had said that that also. Are there any other concerns or issues from any of the other department heads? Because we as a nation are facing a job shortage with employees, with people willing to work. People, all job markets are having a hard time. So we're in a real competitive situation, not only for police, but for any department that loses employees, gonna have, I feel, are gonna have a hard time recruiting somebody. So we must look at it that way. Yes, Madam Mayor.
First of all, thank you for letting me make comments and for all the really great discussion that everyone is having today. I really appreciate that. I am wondering if following this call, Alan can, or Melissa, one of the two, can send out to the board, just so that we have that in the backs of our minds, kind of a summary of, you know, maybe the past 10 years of, Alan said we've given a COLA every year that he's been here. I think that's 4 for Alan. Just to give us a sense, there were a couple of years when it was very dry and we were not able to do anything. And just so that when the board gets to this recommendation, that we know the history and are able to speak to that when it comes up, whether it's in the public or with employees. That, you know, the what % have we given over the years so that we know where we are.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Good point.
Anyone else?
I do want to say thank you to everybody. That gives me a little bit more assistance and direction here. I don't want to break up a good time, but I need to get to a TDA board meeting. We're going to be discussing the budget, and we've asked for a couple of things in the TDA budget, so I really need to be there to support those requests. So
Okay,
if we're getting close.
I think we are. I see that no one's got their hands up. So Commissioner Bullock, in the form of a motion, please, to go to the board. We will be recommending a 4% cost of living to all employees and the study of implementing a merit system for the future years. I don't want to put a year on it like Commissioner Kern put, but hopefully for 22, 23.
I agree with that, yeah.
Do we need a
They
motion?
did not put that in form of a motion.
Do we
Thank-
need a separate motion to address the salary study specific to the PD? Or Alan, is that something you can just go ahead and do?
That's something I'm going to go ahead and do, and I will provide you with that information once I receive it. I wouldn't expect you to vote on something that you fully don't know the price tag associated with it. So I think you can hold off on that. Hopefully I can get that information from her within a day or two, and I'll get that out to you very quickly.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to suggest that our HR director, as soon as possible, get as much information you can about the implementation of a merit system that we can come back, look at, and study, and hopefully implement within the city of Oxford in the near future. Any other question? Anything else before we let our manager go to his next meeting?
Well, I've got a good number of board members on here. Everybody understood the email that went out yesterday about returning to normal regarding COVID and the opening of city facilities, and that our next meeting, agenda meeting is
The second.
the first, the second or the, yeah, I think it's the first, actually. Yeah. And then the next meeting will be the 8th. So we'll be coming back to City Hall.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody. Commissioner Kern, you were getting ready to say something.
I was just going to say, you're probably holding the last Zoom meeting for a while, hopefully.
I would like to thank everybody for attending today. If no further conversation, I will consider this meeting adjourned, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Y'all too.